Homosexuality is so perverse and deviant and disgusting and unhealthy that virtually every civilization and nation has considered it to be unnatural and immoral from time immemorial. Homosexuals die at a very young age because of all the diseases and all the filth they contract from their behavior. Yet they defend it because they're secular humanists and they have to defend what is popular. They're not scientific. They're not objective. They're simply mouthing what is popular among secular elites and secular humanists. So let's not confuse, point number one, let's not confuse biblical Christianity with the other world religions. And let's not use a debating tactic where the abuses of certain followers of a religion, you can attribute that to the religion itself. Jesus would not be in favor of the Crusades. If you know anything about the Crusades, they were abomination. At the beginning of the Crusades would have a giant army. In the beginning of the army, I read a book about one of the Crusades, they have a giant banner worshiping the Virgin Mary. And they have priests and so forth carrying statues of the Virgin Mary. In the back of the army, they have a huge camp of prostitutes. As the Crusaders passed through Constantinople and the Greek Orthodox areas, they murdered thousands of Christians and stole their food. The Crusaders were not acting as Christians. It's indefensible to defend the Crusades. Second, when an atheist points the finger at Christians and condemns their history as evil and violent, it says that the source of evil in this world is either, when they say it's the source of evil in this world, they are either ignorant of history or dishonest, or just plain stupid. They don't know the facts. Why do I say this? Well, I say it because atheists and the philosophy of atheism has led to more death and destruction in the 20th century than the previous 2,000 years of Christianity combined. I'm not exaggerating one bit. This observation is true even if we include all the hypocritical false versions of Christianity. All the persecutions of the Roman Catholic Church, for example. The numbers or statistics do not lie. Vladimir Lenin, you've heard of him, the Russian Revolution, and his atheistic cohorts. His policies led to the starvation of millions of people in the Soviet Union in 1920 and 21. If it was not for the relief efforts of a man named Herbert Hoover, who went on to become president, and the United States, over 14 million people would have died. 14 million people would have died, instead of only a few million. The atheist Joseph Stalin deliberately starved to death, depending on what book you read, depending on what statistics you read, anywhere from 15 to 20 million Ukrainians. Their starvation was a deliberate act of the state. It was done deliberately. They knew exactly what was going on. They wanted them to die. The atheistic regimes of Lenin and Stalin also murdered more people in 40 years by shooting and executions and torture than all the persecutions of the Roman Catholic Church for over 1,500 years. Thousands upon thousands, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people were shot and murdered throughout the Soviet Union. The atheist Chairman Mao is responsible for murdering over 40 million Chinese people. And that's a low statistic. There are ones that go higher than that. Adolf Hitler, an atheist, a mystic but an atheist, murdered over 20 million Soviets, 6 million Jews, over 1 million Christians and Gypsies, and undesirables. He murdered hundreds of thousands of crippled people and the mentally retarded. And his philosophy, his actions were based on Darwinian evolution. We could mention the 2 million murdered by Pol Pot, but several 100,000 murdered by the Vietnamese communists, all atheists, the thousands and thousands murdered by Castro, and so on and so forth. The 20th century, if you took all the people murdered by Roman Catholics throughout all the Middle Ages, it would be a half a thimbleful compared to an Olympic-sized ocean pool of what the Soviets did. Just the Soviets. The atheistic regimes of the 20th century make the Crusaders and the witch hunts and the murderers of the Counter-Reformation under Torquemada look like a picnic. We must understand that when professing Christians did the Crusades or persecuted Protestants or killed witches without proper evidence, they were being inconsistent with the Bible. They were being inconsistent with the teachings of Jesus Christ and the apostles. They were being hypocrites, or at best, bad Christians. But when Stalin, Lenin, Hitler, Pol Pot, Ho Chi Minh, Castro, and so on tortured and murdered their millions upon millions, they were acting consistent with the atheistic worldview. Now, why do I say that? Because in a materialistic chance universe, men, logically, have no more value than a rat or a cockroach. Atheists can talk about ethics all they want. They can write page after page about human worth and dignity. But all of it, if the atheistic worldview is true, is nothing more than an arbitrary viewpoint with no basis. The atheist needs to answer some questions. Number one, in a chance materialistic universe, or more properly, according to them, it would be called a multiverse, because they don't believe in any kind of unity of laws, where everything is in flux, how can anything be an absolute? The Greek philosophers understood this problem very well, and they posited a realm of unchanging ideals that were objective for man. So if you said to a Greek philosopher, why is it wrong to murder? And they'd say, well, in the realm of ideals, there's this law that says it's wrong to murder. And we looked at the realm of ideals. They recognized the need for something objective and transcendent to man, if there's going to be unchanging universal ethics. They understood that. Now, their idea was arbitrary, but it took seriously the problem of ethical absolutes in the realm of pure flux, which is what the evolutionists believe. Atheists can talk about ethics, but they cannot give any sound reasons for ethics. So when Joe Stalin kills a few million people, so what? What's the difference between that and exterminating the cockroaches out of your apartment or your house? The atheist cannot consistently give you an answer. He cannot give you a reason why it's wrong. Number two, in a universe of pure contingency, of pure materialistic immanence, where death is inevitable for everyone. And according to their own view, at death, what happens? At death comes the complete cessation of your existence. Your consciousness is snuffed out. When you die, it is as though you never even existed to you. If that's true, then why would ethics really matter anyway? I ask you, why would it matter? The atheist could argue that living a bad life will leave behind a bad legacy, or bad memories of your existence. You want to lead a good life and leave behind a good legacy for your ancestors and for people to remember you by. I've heard that before. But there are two insurmountable problems for the atheist argument. First, once you are dead, in the atheist worldview, you cease to exist, and it is though to you, it is though you never even existed at all, you're not going to care what people think about you. It doesn't really matter. Once you're dead in the atheistic worldview, you're no different than a rock or a pile of excrement. You're not. You're really not. They both are the same. They're just atoms. There's no existence there. There's no consciousness. It's interesting, you know, if Hitler confided in his friends, his close friends, that his plans for Europe, the domination of Europe, did not work out, well, he would just put a bullet in his head. It doesn't work out, I can just end it all with a bullet. And that's what he did. You see, there's no reason for the atheist to be honest or good or moral. It's all arbitrary. It's arbitrary. Second, If one connects the need to be moral with community standards or society's view of you once you're dead, then this is easily refuted by the fact that at some point, according to the atheistic worldview, at some point in the future, the sun and the whole solar system is going to be destroyed. Either by a supernova, where everything will be burned up by fire and blown apart, or if the sun just simply dies out, an icy death. Everything will be destroyed. Every human being that's alive will be dead. It will not matter in the atheistic worldview whether you were Charles Manson, Mother Teresa, Jeffrey Dahmer, or Albert Einstein. It doesn't matter. Your whole existence will be meaningless. Because you'll cease to exist. Everybody will cease to exist. There's no memories of you. There's no record of you. There's nothing. You're atoms floating in the void. Tell me, where's the basis for ethics in that? But the atheists will argue, well, that's not fair. You've mentioned a whole bunch of bad atheists. But there are a lot of good atheists in Britain, Canada, the United States, and so on. Well, is there? Are there good atheists? The vast majority of atheists who like to identify themselves as secular humanists are politically liberal and are in favor of abortion on demand. The vast majority of atheists are liberals. I'm sure there's probably a few libertarians, but they're in favor of abortion too. Since 1973, over 40 million babies have been murdered in North America. All legally, all sanctioned by the state. The weakest, most vulnerable, most in need of protection among us are nothing more than a piece of meat on a butcher table to the atheist. Is that not true? It is, isn't it? You can chop the baby up, you can poison it slowly, you can poke a hole in its skull and suck its brain out. You can scrape it out of the womb like an oyster. Now, why is this Holocaust? And that's what it is. It's a Holocaust. We've murdered more babies by far than Hitler killed Jews in this nation. Why is this Holocaust, this butchery, this monstrous evil okay? Well, the atheist says so. The atheist arbitrarily says, well, this is not human life. Or if it's human life, we don't define it as mature enough to warrant protection under the law. The atheist has arbitrary ethics. And he has decided that babies, human beings, under a certain age can be murdered in the most barbaric possible manner for our convenience. For our convenience. Now, once again, remember that atheists like to bring up ethics or morality. And they like to point their blood-stained fingers at the Bible or at Christians. But the only way they can do that is to steal concepts from the Christian worldview. It's the only way they can do it. Third, the idea that evil and warfare comes from religion and that atheism would bring a world of peace and harmony is based on a fantasy without any historical or factual basis. Now, I'm not denying that religion has caused wars. I'm not denying that at all. But atheism itself is a faith system. An atheist ought to admit, if they're honest, look, I can't prove that God doesn't exist. I cannot prove that Jesus Christ did not rise from the dead. I cannot prove that Christ is not ruling from the right hand of God. I cannot disprove the Bible is the Word of God. If they're honest, they would admit that. They have a faith system that has many competing varieties, and that has engendered many bloody conflicts. There's the atheism of Nietzsche, which was admired by the Nazis. There's the atheism of Gautama Buddha, which is quite passive. Yeah, he was an atheist. Or at best you could say he was an agnostic. There's the Darwinian racist atheism of Adolf Hitler. And the Darwinian class warfare atheism of Stalin. Stalin and his atheist friend, at least at one time they were close friends, Trotsky, had their differences. And, well, Stalin had one of his secret agents sneak into Mexico and put an ice pick